Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. This CD or DVD, I'm going to make two. This one is just going to be a general presentation, and it relates to something that we've been dealing with for over 40 years. I will be leaving Washington, D.C., and I'll be going back to Oakland, inshallah, sometime during this month. And when I go back to Oakland, it's by design. When I left Oakland, it was by design. And I want to speak especially today to, let's call it, the Iranian community. I will probably, sometime during the end of this month, on Thursday night, that's when you have Dua Komil, I will visit out at the Saba Center. And you know what Saba Center is. It's a big, giant complex right there in San Jose. And there was a time when all the Iranians in Northern California would come to Masjid al-Islam in East Oakland. And it was a very unique time, and it was a unique place, because that was one of the first Masjid that was opened specifically based on Quran and Sunnah. And as far as the Iranian community is concerned, the first lecture that I gave that I can remember, the one that was managing the program was Javad Larijani. It was at our famous Dwannell Hall, 145 Dwannell Hall. And this talk is called The Seventh of Teer. And you all know when the 7th of Teer was. The 7th of Teer was a day that shook the foundation of the Islamic Republic. On the 6th of Teer, the Rahbar at that time, he was Ayatollah Khamenei, Hujjatul Islam. And he was blown up by a tape recorder. The reason he has a prosthetic arm in one side is because he's what we call a living martyr. He was blown up on the 6th of Teer. On the 7th of Teer, 72 high officials in the Islamic Republic was killed, was martyred. And I was asked to come to UC Berkeley a few days later and give a talk. That was one of my first main addresses to the community. And when I spoke to the people, one of our brothers told me years later how significant it was, because when I looked out in the audience, I could see the brothers on this side, the sisters over here, and I could see everybody's eyes was red from crying all night and feeling very disturbed, because now we live in the days of a semi-permanent Islamic Republic. In those days, it was guesswork, 100%. Nobody, that series of bombing was followed another series of bombings and killings from Mutahari and on and on and on. And that went on for years. And one of our brothers who was going to school in San Francisco at that time, then he transferred up to Utah. So you'll know who I'm talking about, at least all of y'all in the Bay Area. Remember, when I'm talking about that Bay Area, I'm talking about from Sacramento, then there's Oakland and Berkeley, San Francisco, and then down to the South Bay, which is San Jose. We now have a big, huge center, the Saba Center in San Jose. In those days, we used Masjid al-Islam. And when the people in our community, knowing my history, saw, first of all, the believers is the ones that helped us buy that. Then after that, we went on the road. First, we went up the coast. We went up to Oregon, raised a lot of money, and two Iranian brothers went with myself and my son. And we went up to the first place we stopped was Eugene, Oregon. And in Eugene, Oregon, one of the brothers there was a future leader at the Daftar, the intersection here in D.C. We raised a nice bit of money there. Then we went on up to Corvallis, did real good there. Then we went to Portland, did real good there. But it was my son and myself, and it was two Iranian brothers, Brother Amir and Brother Vahid. And later on, the Saudi community told me, of course at that time I was real famous on the MSA circuit, not MSA PSG, which I became, but the regular MSA. At that time, there was no ISNA and all that. So we did good. I thought we did so well that my son and I got in the car and we traveled all across the country, raising funds for the Masjid. Now, when we bought that Masjid, with help from yourselves and others, the people in the community said, who are those guys up on the roof helping? Because, we bought an old building and we fixed it up. And I said, those are Iranians. And they said, I knew it. What the community was saying was, they had no idea. The Iranians on the roof was you guys. students, da-da-da-da-da. But the people in the community thought they're Iranians, they're drug dealers. Because the biggest suppliers, one of the guys was so big over across the bay, we called him the Shah of Iran. They would, so when they saw y'all up on the roof, they thought I was still in business, and that they said, we knew that they didn't know y'all was 100% anti-drugs, had nothing to do with drugs. They didn't know that. All they knew was Iranians. It was so humorous. So when they thought about Iranians, they thought about this. This is not to you, this might look a little funny. Actually, this is the last stage of this. This is when I stopped, because this is it's almost clownish looking. It's not clownish. But in those days, it wasn't a clown. Now, this is sophisticated to me. It's the same thing. This is a black suit with white stuff on it, and this is a white suit with black stuff on it to go with the car. The same thing, it matches, all of it match. And of course there's Meek in the car too. So, and by the way, there's a car right here, right in this corner. That's a 1968 or 69 Toyota. It wasn't the first one anybody ever, but it was the first one I ever heard of. One of my friends had it, a sister. This is a small car, so it was considered a woman's car. And we used to call it a toy. It was almost a joke. A Toyota Corolla. Now you can't go anywhere without it. And these big Cadillacs, I'm not going to try to stick to. I'm going to just go on and talk. This thing right here has a 472 cubic inch engine. And the biggest one was 500 cubic inches. This thing has a 4-barrel carburetor. That means it has 4 jets pulling gasoline. And this thing right here, in the city, you get about 6 to 9 miles a gallon. Out on the highway, you might get 9 to 11 miles a gallon. I'm not going to go anymore. This was, of course, before the gas in those days wasn't but 30 cent, Anyway, that's that. That is a bad car. I'm showing you this so I give you the backup of why they would think. Now, this is years later, but it's only, if that was 68, 69, if that was 69 or 70, this is only 10 years later. So I've been overseas, and when I was overseas, I went to Africa, of course, and I traveled all around, and I got to know the world, but I also wind up in South America. And all of a sudden, everybody's hearing about all of this cocaine that's coming from where, of all places? Colombia. In those days, nobody ever heard of Colombia. When I heard about it, it was a government agent. I met him in La Paz, Bolivia. And he was pretending to be a hippie and everything. And he said, what you want to do? You want to go to Colombia. I got friends up there. They have horses and everything. I got friends up there, and you go up there. That's how I got to Colombia, because I was going to Peru and I would wind up in Bolivia, which is the cheapest place you could get cocaine in those days. And it was true. They said, go up to Colombia. Why? Because at that time, the United States government of America had selected Colombia as the central distribution point for cocaine from North America and the rest of the world. So what happened was this. They wanted me to go to where, this is like the gold rush in 1849. You go to Colombia, and that's going to be the new spot. They didn't say that, but that's what they were telling me. Peru, now Bolivia is landlocked. Bolivia doesn't